Open a bag of flour that has sat in the pantry since spring and find a small brown beetle crawling across the top of it, and you already know the rest of the story before it finishes. Check the oats. Check the cornmeal. Check anything in that cupboard that came from a field instead of a factory, because if one bag has weevils, the rest of the pantry usually does too, and by the time you can see them, they have already been in there for weeks, quietly working through a winter's worth of stored food, one kernel at a time. Here is what most people do about it. They throw out the flour, spray the shelves with something from a can, and if it keeps coming back, they call an exterminator. Who signs them up for a quarterly contract that runs somewhere around $800 a year, every year, for as long as they own the house? Here is what families in old northern farmhouses did instead, and what plenty of them still do. They kept a $14 bag of a soft white powder on a shelf in the grain house, and once a year, sometimes twice, they dusted it into the bins, along the baseboards and around the foundation. And the bugs that showed up simply did not survive long enough to become a problem. That powder is diatomaceous earth, and I want to show you exactly why it worked, why it still works, and why almost nobody in the pest control industry brings it up first. Start with what it actually is, because this is not a folk remedy with a vague explanation behind it. Diatomaceous earth is the fossilized shells of microscopic algae called diatoms, mined out of ancient lake beds in places like Nevada, Oregon, and California, then ground into a fine powder. Under a microscope, that powder is not smooth. It is made of countless tiny, sharp-edged particles. When an insect with an exoskeleton, a beetle, a weevil, an ant, walks through it, those particles scratch through the waxy outer layer that every insect depends on to hold moisture in its body. Once that waxy layer is compromised, the insect starts losing water it cannot replace, and it dies of dehydration, usually within a week to 2 weeks. It is not poison. There is no chemical for an insect to build resistance to. It is a physical mechanism, the same one every time, and it has worked the same way for as long as insects have had exoskeletons. People have understood this in a general way for a very long time. Grain stored in mixed dust and ash to keep insects out is documented in farming traditions going back centuries, in more places than just one. Plain wood ash from the stove did some of the same job in a pinch, drying out the same waxy coating in roughly the same crude way, which is why you will still hear old-timers mention shaking ash into a grain bin if that was all a family had on hand. But the specific product farmhouse families in the northern United States would recognize, the bagged, food-grade diatomaceous earth you can still buy today did not become widely available until the 1950s, and the first pesticide formulations of it were registered with federal regulators in 1960. That timing matters because it lines up almost exactly with when a lot of these same farmhouses were finally getting electricity and a proper cellar or grain house. Instead of relying entirely on open bins, it became one more thing you kept on the shelf next to the lamp oil and the canning jars. Cheap, dry, and it did not go bad sitting there for years. Now here is the part worth sitting with. A licensed pest control company today runs on recurring contracts. That is not a guess. That is how the industry itself describes its own business. A standard residential customer on a quarterly plan is commonly billed around $800 a year, and industry figures on the business side of pest control state plainly that a renewing subscription customer generates roughly 12 times more revenue over 3 years than someone who pays for a single treatment and does not come back. Companies with a high share of recurring auto-renewing contracts sell for meaningfully more than companies that rely on one-time service calls. That is not me guessing at motive. That is literally how the industry values itself when a pest control company gets bought or sold. I am not telling you there is a secret meeting where a room full of exterminators agreed not to mention a $14 bag of powder. There does not need to be. 1. A business built on $800 a year contracts has no reason to lead with the thing that might solve your problem for $14 on a Saturday afternoon. Nobody has to lie to you for that to happen. They just never have to bring it up. And for the better part of a century, most of them have not. If you want to use this yourself, here is what actually matters. Only buy food-grade diatomaceous earth. Never the pool filter or industrial grade sold for swimming pool filtration. Pool grade DE is heat treated in a way that changes its structure and makes it genuinely dangerous to breathe. Food grade is not treated that way, and it is the kind sold at hardware stores, farm supply stores, and feed stores for exactly this purpose, usually in a 4-pound bag for somewhere between $10 and $15. This is not a grain bin only trick either. Food grade DE is registered for crawling insects generally, ants, roaches, silverfish, earwigs, the same pests that show up in a kitchen with no grain in sight at all, so the bag you buy for the pantry does double duty on the rest of the house. Dust it in a thin, barely visible layer, not a pile, because a pile just gets walked around, along the inside edges of a grain bin, in the corners of pantry shelves, in a line along the baseboards where a kitchen meets a wall, and around the outside foundation of the house where crawling insects come in from the yard. A single 4-pound bag covers a surprising amount of ground when you are dusting it this thin, and it keeps working in dry storage for years without losing potency. So, one bag on the shelf can genuinely last a family several seasons. One more thing worth being precise about, because it is the question people actually ask. Food-grade diatomaceous earth is not the same material as the pool filter grade sold for swimming pool systems, and the difference is not marketing. Food grade is typically under 2% crystalline silica. Pool filter grade is heat-treated during manufacturing and can run around 60% crystalline silica, which is a genuinely hazardous thing to be breathing in regularly. Only ever use the bag labeled food grade. Even with that kind, the powder itself is still a fine dust, and any fine dust can irritate a set of lungs if you are standing in a cloud of it. So wear a simple dust mask while you are applying it. Keep kids and pets out of the room until it settles, and do not dust it directly onto bedding or anywhere an animal eats or sleeps. Applied the way farmhouse families always applied it. Thin, out of the way, and left alone once it is settled, it is about as unremarkable a substance as you will find in the pantry. It just does not forgive being careless with the cloud of dust while you are shaking it out of the bag. I want to be honest about where this does not work as well, because the whole point of this channel is telling you what actually holds up, not just what sounds good. Diatomaceous earth stops working once humidity climbs much past 65%. Moisture in the air makes the sharp particles clump together and round off, and a damp basement or a humid summer kitchen can undo a dusting within days. It is also not fast. Insects die from dehydration over about a week to 2 weeks, not on contact, so if you already have a full-blown infestation crawling across your counter tonight, this is not the tool for tonight. It is the tool for keeping a clean grain bin clean and for handling a problem before it becomes an emergency, not for putting one out after it has already caught fire. My grandmother kept a coffee can of it on the shelf above the flour bin, and every fall when the new grain came in, she would run a thin line of it around the edge of every bin before it got filled. She never once called anybody about weevils, not because she was lucky, but because the bugs that showed up never got the chance to become a colony. It was not a miracle cure. It was maintenance, the same as greasing a hinge before it squeaks, done on a schedule so the expensive problem never had a chance to start. Nobody in that generation thought of it as a trick or a hack. It was just what you did every fall, the same weekend you brought in the last of the harvest, because a full grain bin was worth protecting, and protecting it cost next to nothing if you did it before you needed to. Go check your own pantry and any grain or feed you have stored, and tell me in the comments what you find, and whether you have ever paid for a quarterly pest contract, and what it cost you a year. Subscribe if you want to keep seeing what old northern households actually kept on their shelves instead of what gets marketed to you today. And if you're the kind of person who wants to know what else got quietly turned into a subscription instead of a one-time fix, stay close, because pests were only the beginning of that story. My name is Walter Northwood, and thanks again for watching.